inside City Hall.
This is what a partnership looks like.
Governor Hochul and Mayor Mamdani are promoting their partnership on free childcare, despite very public disagreements about raising taxes on wealthy New Yorkers. President Trump has fired Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem amid growing criticism over her leadership. Meanwhile, the second rental ripoff hearing for tenants is taking place tonight in Queens. It comes as some public housing residents are expressing frustration that the Mamdani administration is not doing enough to address their concerns. I'll talk it over with Jessica Katz, the city's former chief housing officer. And NYU Langone is ending youth access to its transgender care program. I'll talk more about it with a leading advocate. For the best news, debate, and analysis of New York politics, join us inside City Hall. Good evening. Welcome to Inside City Hall for Thursday, March 5th, 2026. I'm Errol Lewis. Mayor Mamdani and Governor Kathy Hochul stood side by side together promoting their free childcare pilot program for 2-year-olds in our city. They promoted the event at a shelter for women and their children, but they also faced questions about the tax policies that separate them. Our Dan Rivley was at the event and joins me now with tonight's top story. Good evening, Dan.
Good evening, Errol. That collaborative relationship was on display when it comes to childcare, but Hochul kept cool under questions from reporters about whether she felt Mayor Mamdani would saddle her with the responsibility for a property tax increase here in the city.
Our feelings or the cookie song? I want the cookie song.
If only all of the interactions between Governor Hochul and Mayor Mamdani could be focused on the kids and their shared interest in a new free childcare program.
The yummy, yummy cookie from the cookie jar.
The pair appearing at an East Harlem home for women and their children that the housing nonprofit WIN runs to promote the childcare pilot program, 2,000 spots for 2-year-olds in select neighborhoods.
And make no mistake, every mom in this shelter who is work able wants to work. And they can't go to work if they don't have access to safe, reliable, and affordable childcare.
Unfortunately, like most adults, they have to deal with taxes. Mamdani's desire to raise them on the wealthy, Hochul's insistence she won't.
We have quite some time left in the budget process. I'm encouraged by the conversations we're having.
Mayor Mamdani has threatened to raise city property taxes without the tax increases. In the words of a reporter, setting Hochul up to be the fall man on a major property tax hike. Frustrated?
This is not a frustrated face. I'm not frustrated. I know how to do this.
Hochul says their respective budget teams are negotiating, and she's already committed $1.5 billion for the city's budget gap, plus nearly $3 billion for childcare over the next 2 years.
We're going to get to the right resolution, and just be assured that I take nothing personal in this business. People say the way they want to say it, but the end of the day is we're going to continue supporting the city of New York.
Meanwhile, Mayor Mamdani's top deputy, City Hall veteran Dean Foulahan, weighed in.
We need other revenues, and people are talking to us about other revenues. We submitted a long list to the legislature that include other options.
Now, this child care pilot for 2-year-olds, as I mentioned in the report, is for select neighborhoods, and it excludes Staten Island. Mayor Mamdani was asked about that, and he said families there can wait for next year when the pilot expands to 12,000 seats, Errol.
And we should be clear when it comes to raising taxes or the prospect of raising taxes, and when it comes to closing budget gaps. There's a legislature involved up in Albany. There's a legislature involved here in the city. The executives don't get to decide these things unilaterally, right?
Oh, for both leaders, of course. So let's look at Mayor Mamdani. He needs a budget that is voted on by the city council, and the council speaker, Julie Menon, said we're not going to do the property taxes, and we're going to take Governor Hochul's word that the tax increases on the wealthy are off the table. Well, let's look at Governor Hochul, right? She has legislative leaders to deal with. There are reports that they're planning to include those tax increases on the wealthy in their what they call one-house budget proposals. Governor Hochul brushed that off. She said they do that every year, and we're doing the negotiations, and so keeping it cool under the questions about their legislative partners.
Right. And when it comes to the two-year-old program, was the idea of doing this at WIN that they'd be one of the providers that would provide some of these services?
They're going to need providers just like that. WIN had a shelter for women and their children, and it also includes child care facilities. Now, I asked Christine Quinn this because this was, I think, gets lost sometimes. This is a universal program. It doesn't matter how much money you make or how little money you make. And so in some of these neighborhoods, they are going to compete with some two-parent households making six figures, but that is the reality of universal care. And she said, that's just the system we're working under. What's important is getting the word out to those families in need that these programs do exist and have them apply.
Okay, thanks very much, Stan. President Donald Trump has fired Kristi Noem as Homeland Security Secretary, announcing that he will nominate Oklahoma Senator Markwayne Mullin as her replacement. The news comes at a time when the department faces scrutiny over its immigration crackdown. Our Washington, D.C. reporter, Shannon Ryan, joins me now from the Capitol with the latest. Good evening, Shannon. And do we know what led to this decision?
Well, lawmakers tell us that this is an idea that the president has been floating for quite some time, but that he got really aggressive about it this past week. Obviously, Noem's term has been marred with controversy, but we're told things really came to a head when she testified on the Hill there this week.
You should resign, Kristi Noem. You should be ashamed of yourself.
After 2 days of what many lawmakers have characterized as disastrous testimony on Capitol Hill.
There's no such thing as illegal immigrants.
President Donald Trump fired his Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem.
Tell me about the letters I wrote you.
Democrats and Republicans teed off on Noem during congressional hearings this week. They expressed anger over her conduct, which includes shifty accounts of the killings of 2 U.S. citizens at the hands of immigration agents she oversees. The shootings prompted Democrats to withhold funding for DHS, triggering a partial shutdown that's dragged on for the past 3 weeks. Democratic leadership say they'll only fund the department if reforms are made to rein in agents, and indicated Noem's firing would not move the needle on negotiations.
This is a problem of policy, not personnel. The rot is deep. No one person can straighten this up until the president changes the whole agency, stops the violence.
She was a corrupt lackey. So we were dealing with the White House before, and we're going to continue to deal with the White House at this point.
Meanwhile, the president was reportedly angry with claims Noem made to members of Congress, stating he was aware of a more than $200 million ad campaign produced by a firm she has ties to, an assertion he disputes.
There is so much attention being paid to Secretary Noem.
Some Republicans, like New York Congressman Nick Langworthy, told Spectrum they felt Noem had become a distraction and expressed concern over funding from DHS sub-agencies like CISA, which handles cybersecurity, being withheld.
Obviously, it's a critical time, with what's going on in Iran, and it was time for a change.
Now, Errol, Noem is the first member of the president's second-term cabinet to be fired.
And Shannon, there were other issues as well, in particular FEMA, which falls under the Department of Homeland Security, where a number of lawmakers were complaining that the agency wasn't responsive in their time of need around some natural disasters, right?
Yeah, there were a lot of questions about her term. So not only about her disaster response, but also the way that funding was allocated, even some personal questions, right? She was asked about a potential affair with her chief advisor, Errol.
Okay. In other news, Shannon, as expected, the U.S. House of Representatives narrowly failed to pass a war powers resolution that would have required President Trump to seek congressional approval on military action in Iran. What are they saying down there? What are the congressional leaders saying about all of that?
Errol, we knew that was going to fail. With Republicans in control, they just didn't have the votes here. Still, we did some reporting on this even yesterday, where we spoke with Congressman Pat Ryan of the Hudson Valley, and he was for this war powers resolution, but he told us even if it failed, more than anything, it was important because he viewed it as a referendum on the president's war.
Okay, thanks very much, Shannon. It is time for a break now. When we come back, the city's largest homeless shelter for men is closing due to deteriorating conditions. We're going to talk about what happens next for hundreds of people who are staying there. Stay with us.
Every day tells a new story. At Mornings on One, we're dedicated to bringing you the stories that matter most to start your day. With in-depth coverage of the day's news.
I'm Pat Kernan. Here are the stories we're following.
And weather updates every 10 minutes.
Tomorrow, some morning sunshine possible. Clouds take over.
It's our responsibility to get you the information you need before you head out the door. Mornings on One. Weekdays starting at 6 on the Spectrum News app. Free for Spectrum and Xfinity customers.
The storm came through with 120-mile-an-hour winds through our neighborhood. My daughter had to evacuate to our house while we were out of town. Sure enough, power goes out. When the generator kicked back on, it, of course, powered the Spectrum modem. She didn't lose service, and we didn't lose connectivity with her through the entire storm. We both breathed a sigh of relief. To have her feel safe and us feel reassured that she was okay was priceless.
Real customers, real reliability. To get the most reliable internet, visit spectrum.com/stay connected.
I'm Sandra, this is Jorge, and we were adopted in 2019. I remember when they first came to us, Michael was already a teenager. The whole cliche of they're so lucky to have you guys, and it's the other way around. They have changed our family for the better. They chose to love us. They didn't have to. They chose us. Family.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org.
Going into the 2026 election, local races will determine national policy, from the economy to public safety. From the governor's race to the balance of power in Washington, this year's ballot has no shortage of important choices. Let Spectrum News New York One be your resource for balanced, up-to-date coverage and analysis, so you can know what the issues are and how they impact your community. Always dedicated, always local, always on. Decision 2026 on Spectrum News New York One. Welcome back to Inside City Hall. The city's Department of Homeless Services is shutting down a massive homeless shelter in Manhattan that has been taking in men and families for more than 40 years. New York One's Lewis Finley joins us now from in front of the shelter in Kips Bay with the details. Good evening, Lewis.
Yeah, good evening, Errol. For decades, men experiencing homelessness across the city have come to this intake center here on East 30th and 1st Avenue, also known as the Bellevue. And with the announcement of the closure, advocates say they have some serious concerns because this has been such a mainstay. Advocates are concerned because they fear that people may not know where to go. They say without a robust outreach campaign, the closure could result in people not getting the help that they need. The city says there will be a large-scale outreach effort across the region, and the Mamdani administration says that the reason for the closure is that this nearly century-old building is in severe disrepair. So the about 250 men here now need to be relocated to other facilities. Earlier today, we spoke with one advocate and a couple people staying here who say they're already been moved to Brooklyn.
There's no information. We have no information. I'm kind of unsure where I'm going.
Several times in the past, we've seen the city try to move lots of people all at once and done a terrible job of it and left people in places that they couldn't stay. And we had to go to court about that a few years ago. So we are very mindful that they have to take care to assess each person and figure out what they need in advance of moving them, so that when they do figure out where to move the person, that they end up in a place that is okay for them.
Now, not everyone is sad to see this intake center go. Neighbors say there have been quality of life issues tied to the intake shelter, sharing this surveillance video of a front desk staff being attacked. They say there have been persistent issues with violence, threats, and people breaking into apartments.
My doorman was jumped over here. They trespassed in the building. They broke my doorman head with a table that used to be there. The table is not good anymore because they broke the table, and then with the leg, they broke my doorman head. He got 18 stitches. And when they mess the garbage all the time, we have to be careful they don't come in the building. They constantly try to break in the building.
Now, the site is set to close at the end of April, and the city says intake for single adult men will move to East 3rd Street starting May 1st. Errol.
Okay, thanks very much, Louis. Local lawmakers say they want to make sure our city is prepared if the Trump administration's immigration enforcement in New York continues. Today, members of the city council probed city officials about their understanding and their policies of the city's sanctuary laws and protection of immigrants. Our Kelly Meno is at the hearing and joins us with the latest. Good evening, Kelly.
Good evening, Errol. And it was actually the first hearing held by the Oversight and Investigations Committee. Their first line of business was making sure that the city's sanctuary laws are being followed.
The fact remains that city resources were used in a manner that is inconsistent with the local laws.
That was Deputy Commissioner James Comroy from the city's Department of Correction, admitting a city investigator violated the city's sanctuary laws. The department's compliance with the laws came under scrutiny Thursday at a city council hearing in the wake of a report last September that detailed 2 violations. The incidents occurred with an investigator serving on a joint task force. Under the city's sanctuary laws, agencies are prohibited from assisting in civil immigration enforcement.
Today, we will learn 2 things. 1, is New York City prepared on paper and in practice to defend to the fullest extent of the law our sanctuary laws against a lawless federal administration? And 2, are our agencies prepared on paper and in practice to protect immigrant New Yorkers?
Along with the report, the city's Department of Investigation recommended major changes at the agency. Comroy said his department has accepted the majority of them. The agency conducted trainings in April and May last year, along with increasing education on the agency's policies for interacting with federal immigration authorities.
The conduct described in the report, although inadvertent, should not have happened. The sanctuary city laws are clear, and the department is bound and complies with them. We agree that clear guidance and robust training are necessary to ensure that these types of incidents do not occur again in the future.
According to the city, in 2024, the department received 403 detainer requests from Immigration and Customs Enforcement, with the number more than doubling in 2025 with 895 detainer requests. Ahead of the hearing, city council members and immigrant advocates said they are looking to a new era of immigration protection under Mayor Mamdani.
We have the facts that says the last administration has been working with ICE to target our most vulnerable New Yorkers. And I'm really excited for this hearing today because we're going to put a spotlight on it so we don't repeat the mistakes that have been happening for the past 4 years.
It is time to turn the page on an era of impunity and bring up transparency when sanctuary laws are violated. Because that is what democracy and accountability look like. No one is above the law.
As of this week, there are only 3 correction officers who are serving on joint task forces. That includes 2 officers assigned to the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, and 1 to the U.S. Marshal's Office. And the DOC official at today's hearing did admit that the issues and gaps in education when it came to their officials didn't come up and they weren't aware of them until the DOI published their report, Errol.
So, I mean, what is the policy supposed to be? On violent offenses, there is supposed to be cooperation, and there's a long list of offenses for which there is supposed to be full cooperation between local authorities and ICE, right?
Yes, but the instances where this one investigator violated sanctuary city laws, the 2 individuals involved in that were not facing violent criminal offenses, but the investigator involved didn't realize that he was sharing information that he wasn't supposed to be sharing with federal immigration authorities, and that's why the violation happened. This particular individual was not consequenced or faced any penalties for that, but they did realize that obviously not everybody that probably works for the agency is aware of exactly how this works and how this works in a practical setting, whether it's talking to them in person, through email, because that's where it happened, was through email. Those aren't the appropriate channels to be doing.
If a city official either deliberately or even accidentally discloses information they're not supposed to disclose, Is there a penalty for that city worker?
You know, they didn't bring that up at today's hearing. They're hoping to prevent that type of information sharing, especially since it's against the law. Their goal is through these trainings, through these educational meetings that they're having, that they're able to avoid that, especially at the highest levels. You know, they're having these with senior leadership, with officials that are higher up, so that they can also be aware of how this works on a day-to-day basis. They realize that maybe for them, sanctuary city laws only applied in certain instances, but it's actually in any type of form when it comes to their information.
The kind of case we often hear about involves the Department of Correction. People who are in custody, getting turned over, that sort of thing. But there are other agencies that have a lot of sensitive information, and these laws apply to them as well, right?
Yeah, that's right. It can come from anywhere. You know, when you think about the Department of Education, they've taken on a lot of immigrant kids who are coming in. The Department of Homeless Services, they took in a lot of an influx of immigrants that came in. You know, all of those departments have this sensitive information, the locations of where these immigrants are staying, family members that are related to them, and they're not supposed to be sharing any of that with immigration authorities. You know, I think for the Department of Correction in particular, theirs is a little more difficult to distance themselves because they have members on joint task forces. So there is information sharing unrelated to immigrants in the city. So that can get kind of murky for them when they're trying to work together for these big takedowns or going after maybe some of these drug busts that we're seeing here in the city.
Okay, thanks very much, Kelly. It is time now for a break. Coming up, tributes are pouring in tonight for former city council member and activist Ronnie Eldridge, who passed away at the age of 95. We'll look back at her life and legacy in 2 minutes. Stay with us.
Stand clear of the closing doors, please.
There's nothing quite like the feeling of going to the theater. Onstage celebrates that excitement every week by taking you behind the scenes with the latest news and in-depth interviews of the hottest shows on and off Broadway. So grab a seat, because this is a show you won't want to miss. Join us every Saturday and Sunday at 7:30 p.m. for Onstage.
Onstage is presented by your Tri-State Cadillac dealers. Discover which Cadillac is right for you and elevate your journey.
I had a heart attack about 1.5 years ago, and so now I have an ICD implant that needs stable and reliable internet to give routine checks and daily reports to my cardiologist. When my cardiologist told me he wasn't getting the information he needed, me and my fiance looked into better internet providers, and we found Spectrum. As soon as we switched, he said he saw every daily report, every routine check that they did. It made us feel like we were back in control of my life.
Real customers, real reliability. To get the most reliable internet, visit Spectrum.com.
Mom was always organized, but she started forgetting to pay her bills on time.
And she'd buy the same gifts over and over.
Telling the girls about my Alzheimer's diagnosis was really hard.
At first, we had our cries, but then we were like, okay, let's make a plan.
Early detection gave us time to adapt together.
It's so important for you to think about what you can do and making the most of what you have.
If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together.
From my time growing up in Queens watching New York One to my time reporting here, I've seen how quickly a story can change. At News All Day, we bring you the news as it's happening, from around the boroughs to local government to your neighborhood, because our city never stops moving.
Hi, I'm Shannon Ferry with the day's developing stories. But first,
stay up to date and informed with News All Day, weekdays from noon to 4.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. A familiar figure in New York City politics and public life has died. Ronnie Eldridge, who was a close advisor to Mayor John Lindsay and other prominent politicians, went on to become a 3-term city council member and a longtime TV host. Our Bobby Kuza joins me now with a look at her life and legacy. Good evening, Bobby.
Good evening, Errol. And Ronnie Eldridge was 95 when she passed away yesterday. So you think about it, her career, and she was active in public life right up until the very end. So her career spanned basically 75 years in New York politics. It was back in the late 50s, early 60s that she got involved in clubhouse politics on the Upper West Side. She became a Democratic leader. And then the list of politicians that she worked for is remarkable. She became very close with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. She, I think, started out volunteering for his campaign for Senate, worked for him, worked in the Lindsay administration, where she was a high-ranking advisor to John Lindsay. She worked for Governor Mario Cuomo, had a cabinet-level position in the Cuomo administration. She was married to Jimmy Breslin, who you see seated next to her there. Breslin, of course, the legendary columnist and writer. And then she became an elected official in her own right. She spent 3 terms on the city council, representing the Upper West Side, beginning in 1989, I believe. And at one point, she also ran for Manhattan Borough President. And then after she left elected office in 2001, she began hosting a public affairs show on CUNY TV on cable, and was doing that right up until the end, right up until, close to the very end. So for the past 20, 25 years, she has been hosting a public affairs show and may be familiar to some viewers. So a lot of really incredible chapters in her life going all the way back to the 50s.
Believe me, we tried to hear all of those chapters. She was extremely helpful. That Anthony Roman, our podcast producer, and I spoke with her multiple times, and just incredibly generous with her time. Clear memory, great anecdotes, hilarious stories where she told us about the Lindsay administration. She told us about Bella Abzug. She told us about what the scene was like.
I forgot Bella Abzug. Yeah, she managed one of her campaigns for Congress.
For Congress, exactly right. And this was somebody who, in the rough and tumble of West Side politics, just had an even keel. Just kind of, didn't have a lot of enemies. Was in demand by Republicans like John Lindsay, as well as Democrats like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Bella Abzug. Everybody wanted a piece of her. And you think about the enormous egos and personalities that she was around. A Gloria Steinem, a Bella Abzug, a Jimmy Breslin, who was a wild man. And she just, she could navigate all of it. She remembered everything, and she was a source of wise counsel for a lot of different people.
Yeah, I mean, you have to have a moderating effect to be married to Jimmy Breslin for all the decades that she was. But I've seen interviews with some of the people that she worked with in the Lindsay administration, and they talked about how disarming she was and how she played a very powerful role advising him, on a lot of matters. I think she was probably the most powerful woman in City Hall for some time, and managed to get things done, but in a way that didn't seem to ruffle any feathers. So she was a very effective operator.
I mean, look, there are a lot of people who have fiery tempers, and things just really upset them. She just seems so even-keeled, and I don't think it was just what she was telling me. You go back and look at the record, and it always comes out the same, which is that she's in the middle of turmoil, but she kind of sees what the goal is. She doesn't take a lot of it personally, and just the stories that she would tell us, she'd say, things were going crazy, so we held a meeting. And this is somebody who I think got a lot of that from the fact that she came to politics somewhat later in life. This was during the women's movement. So prior to that, if you were a homemaker, for a lot of different reasons, you really had to just be a homemaker. So she gets into politics like sort of in her 30s.
Yeah.
She's already had a family. She's already kind of figured out a lot of things in life. And then she just brought a real mature vision, even as a young woman, to politics.
She actually worked in TV. In her early career, she worked at CBS and was always interested in politics. She was a political science major at Barnard College, but didn't know that it was even possible to have a life and career in politics until she began getting active in some of these Democratic clubhouse politics. So, it came a little bit later, but then, again, as the decades stretched on, she really left an imprint in so many different ways. And she was a liberal Democrat. She was very active on women's issues and, advocating for a lot of other marginalized communities.
Okay. Thank you very much, Bobby. Ronnie Eldridge was 95 years old. We are going to take a short break now. When we come back, I'll be joined in studio by the city's former chief housing officer. We're going to talk about Mayor Mamdani's rental ripoff hearings and much more. Stay with us.
My time at New York One has shown me that in the city that never sleeps, the news never stops. So as the day winds down, turn to the rush hour.
Good afternoon, I'm Monica Burke.
To catch up on the stories that matter across the 5 boroughs, with in-depth interviews from the city's newsmakers, plus the latest forecast. Catching you up with today, preparing you for tomorrow. Right here on the Rush Hour. Weekdays from 4 to 7 p.m.
The Nanakuli Valley is the largest Hawaiian community in the state of Hawaii. Because of Spectrum and their investment, Alulike is a place that people can come and access technology. Many of our participants don't have computers at home. We have programs that help students, that help adults get employment. Spectrum gives us the tools to help more people get there.
I'm Chris Jakimick. I served in the United States Air Force and I deployed 3 times. So in 2017, I was serving as an Air Force First Sergeant. Our motto in that role is my job is people, everyone is my business. But unfortunately in that year, I would lose my own brother, Lance Corporal Adam Jakimick, to suicide. The majority of veteran suicides are from guns. I store my weapons securely, not only for myself, but for my family. My service never stops.
At Spectrum Noticias, we recognize that our New York City community is vibrant and diverse.
Spectrum Noticias delivers balanced coverage of the stories that matter in our communities and across the country.
Our journalists are based in the neighborhoods we cover, ensuring you get in-depth reporting on what's happening in the places we call home.
So join us at Spectrum Noticias. We're always on, always there for you.
Now available on your TV. Check your local listings. Also available on the Spectrum News app.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. Tonight, the Mamdani administration is holding the second of its so-called rental rip-off hearings, where New Yorkers who are frustrated with their landlords can speak directly to city officials. Tonight's hearing is in Long Island City in Queens, but the hearings have received scrutiny from many housing advocates who are concerned that the city's own public housing residents are not being included. The city says all residents are welcome to testify this evening. Joining me now to talk about the hearings and much more is the city's former chief housing officer, Jessica Katz. She also leads the New York City Housing Authority Regeneration Initiative. That's an independent team of housing experts and advocates who are working directly with tenants to improve housing conditions in public housing. The initiative is funded in part by the Charles H. Revson Foundation, where I volunteer as chairman of the board. Welcome to the program. Great to see you.
Thanks so much for having me.
So public housing did not get a whole lot of discussion on the campaign trail, but you're saying that it really should be central to Mamdani's housing vision. Why is that?
You know, a housing plan is not a housing plan if NYCHA is not front and center. That's clear. NYCHA, the work that needs to be done to fix public housing does not lend itself well to a campaign promise or a bumper sticker, so I'm glad that they're taking their time with it, but I do expect their housing plan to put NYCHA front and center.
It doesn't make for an easy bumper sticker for the same reason that mayors generally don't like to get involved in NYCHA, right?
There's no easy answers. It's a really, really big, thorny problem. I think for the first time, we have a toolkit that's working, and we're seeing some of that light at the end of the tunnel. There are about 3,000 to 5,000 units a year are being converted through either the PACT program or the Public Housing Preservation Trust. If we could double that to 8,000 or 10,000, then we'd really be cooking.
And how could you double it?
So the financing is available through what's called the conversion to a Section 8 program. Traditional public housing is funded through Section 9. You would convert to Section 8. And then NYCHA is basically the only property owner in the country who doesn't get to do what everyone else does, which is take out a mortgage to pay for the repairs that you need. So that conversion to Section 8 enables you to do that.
Got it. And PACT, which stands for Permanent Affordability Commitment Together, essentially allows people to use a Section 8 voucher, take it to an entity, and that then becomes the basis for them to borrow money to do the repairs that are needed? Is that how it works?
Yes, it creates a public-private partnership that brings in third-party management of the buildings and brings in the cash that you need to do the repairs through that Section 8 transition. But the tenants' rights do not change. The tenants' rent does not change. Everyone is capped, and it does not mean, while it is bringing in third-party managers, it does not mean that your apartments are going market rate.
Right, and the ownership of public housing remains public forever and ever and ever. That doesn't change it.
The land stays owned by NYCHA.
Right. So now there's been some reporting that not all PAC managers are doing a great job, right? So the model isn't perfect. Just like anywhere else, you have to get good, skilled, caring people who are going to do a good job.
No models are perfect. The tenant satisfaction surveys that are performed by a third party, about 90% of tenants say that they're happy with PACT and they would do it again and they'd recommend it to their friends and family. The rate of housing maintenance code violations is about half of what it is in the general affordable housing stock and the general multifamily stock in general. But absolutely, it requires oversight and best practices.
Yeah, and look, 90% success in government or anywhere else is actually pretty good, right?
Pretty good.
Yeah. You say that the NYCHA board should be expanded. Why?
So the scale of NYCHA, it's the size of a major city. It's the size of Atlanta, Minneapolis. It's hundreds of thousands of people. And it's governed by a 7-member board. It's just not enough people to have the proper governance and subcommittees and the folks you would need in order to create the oversight that you'd want to see.
You've also suggested that there be, just as there are tenant associations and there's an association of the presidents of the tenant associations, and there's kind of a resident-led parallel, or at least resident-focused leadership team that's an important stakeholder at NYCHA. You've written that those who are involved in PACT should also have kind of a similar leadership group.
Yeah, so the Housing Authority guarantees the right to organize and the right to a tenant association. And when I was at City Hall, we created this process where NYCHA tenants are sitting in the driver's seat to pick who their PACT partners should be. And as they go through that process, they should absolutely be asking the PACT partners that they're evaluating and picking who they want to work with, whether or not they will continue to maintain that right to organize.
So now the overall problem, which I guess is the big number we probably could have started with, is that the estimated cost to bring all of the units up to a state of good repair is something like $78 billion. It keeps going up. I remember when it was $40 billion. You've suggested that one of the ways to sort of get the units repaired or even rebuilt is to build first, get the new stuff done first, not ask everybody to leave and then start a construction process that seems to have a lot of people worried, including across the street from right here.
Yeah, so there's a $78 billion need, as you said. An important thing about that number, other than just its sheer scale, is that that's almost half of the capital need for the housing authorities across the entire country. So you just know that the federal government is not coming to save us with this. So we really need to do, but we do have these two tools. We have PACT and we have the Preservation Trust that is chipping away at that bit by bit, but there's still a lot of mistrust out there. So one of the ways in which you could build trust is instead of asking somebody to take a leap of faith and move out of their apartment while you renovate it, is to build a building first, and then they have that fact in front of them of the new building without having to, take a leap of faith.
And is that an engineering and logistics issue? More so than anything else?
NYCHA has this RFQ out earlier last year, a request for qualifications around interest if there were vacant lots around NYCHA developments, if there's other opportunities to build that would make it easier to build first. There have been some infill projects on NYCHA parking lots, things like that, although primarily those have not been in the service of the existing Section 9 tenants. So that's the kind of planning process that we need to hear about, and that's what I would be looking for from a Mamdani administration, is that the housing plan, the budget plan, any kind of zoning discussions, NYCHA is really front and center.
So now, with things like tonight's rental ripoff hearing, it's not that NYCHA residents can't go, but the landlord that they'd be complaining about is the city itself. So it kind of takes it out of the kind of conversation that they're trying to have at these hearings. Do we need to have separate hearings where people come and sort of let NYCHA know what they feel about how things are going?
Yeah, so the purpose of the rental ripoff hearings is something different. NYCHA is present at those hearings, to my knowledge, and so there will be an opportunity for NYCHA tenants to get their voices heard. But as you can see from the uproar around this, NYCHA tenants are really demanding to have their voices heard. So making sure that the votes happen in the trust, making sure that the tenants get to do a tenant selection process in PACT are all ways that you can get NYCHA tenants involved. But I'll add that as much as we want to hear the voices of NYCHA residents, the time for diagnosing the problem is kind of over.
Right.
We're $80 billion in the hole, and there's nothing, and NYCHA knows that, and that's a clear fact. So really seeing some action. I've worked for 3 mayoral administrations now, and if I've learned anything, it's that it's really the execution that matters more than the ideology.
Well, yeah, in our last minute, what is your best case scenario if the Mamdani administration wants to move forward, take you up on this challenge to, like, let's make this central, let's get it out of a silo, let's make it a central part of our housing plan?
So listen, over the course of my career in housing in New York City, HPD, for example, has gone from about 10,000 units a year to about 20 or 30,000 units a year. So it's not out of the ballpark of what government agencies in New York, the scale that they're able to work on.
Mm-hmm.
So if you went from 3 to 5, which is what we're doing currently in PACT, to 8 to 10,000, there's 170,000 units. You'd be able to see in our lifetimes a real turnaround in the process. And right now we have 2 tools. It's not enough. It would be great to have more. But right now, PACT and the Trust are really the way to move forward.
Yeah, right. 30 or 40,000 units out of 170. It's, that's real progress.
Now we're starting to get somewhere.
Okay, we shall see. Thanks very much. Great talking with you, Jessica Katz. Let's take a short break now. When we come back, for the first time since the conflict in Iran erupted last week, the first flight carrying Americans who are fleeing the Middle East has landed in New York City. We're going to hear from some of them after this short break. Stay with us.
After 30 years of forecasting for New York, I've learned it takes a dedicated team to cover all the weather our city has to offer. As chief meteorologist at New York One, I'm honored to be able to help New Yorkers plan their day.
Morning, noon, or night, our team is here to bring you accurate forecasts you can count on, from severe weather updates to our weather on the ones. Watch the New York One weather experts with your weather on the ones on your TV and on the go with the Spectrum News app.
I moved from Dallas to Los Angeles all by myself. The order of things I wanted to set up was internet, water, then power. I needed to take a shower, but I really did need the internet for work and to watch my shows. That's kind of a crazy thing to admit in front of a camera. Pretend I didn't say that. I got to Spectrum. I was so relieved that I was getting the best bang for my buck. It was a huge weight taken off of my shoulders.
Real customers, real savings. To see how much you can save, visit spectrum.com/save.
I'm an ex-drug dealer, and I'll be your sub today. 2 milligrams of fentanyl can be lethal. A lethal dose is in here. Who gets it, I won't know.
It's cheap, it's potent, and it's profitable.
The sad reality is fentanyl is being mixed into everything now.
More kitchen now.
My father was a New York City firefighter. My mission, like his, is to serve New Yorkers in a city that doesn't stop when the sun goes down. Being with New York One since the beginning, I'm now honored to join you even earlier each weeknight. Starting at 8 with New York Tonight, we'll explore the latest news developments, followed by New York One at 10 to wrap up your day. So join me each weeknight starting at 8 right here on New York One.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. Some Americans who were stuck in the Middle East since the U.S. and Israel began their attack on Iran landed safely in America today. It was the first flight from Dubai to JFK since the conflict began. Our Nia Clark was at the airport and talked to some of the passengers about their ordeal.
A packed Emirates Airlines Flight 203 touched down at JFK Airport late Thursday morning. Airline passengers stuck in Dubai since the U.S. and Israel attacked Iran say they're relieved.
I'm just thankful to be home. Thank you to the UAE for keeping my husband and I safe. It just feels good to be home, you know.
Stranded for days due to canceled flights following attacks from Iran.
We weren't sure when we were going to get back, and so being back home feels really good.
And you have a baby.
Yeah, we were traveling with a 6-month-old, so it was really stressful.
Sweeta Patel's husband, Anush, says his family's safety was a top concern.
We could see the U.S. consulate in Dubai from our window,
And for 3 days, I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh, okay, it's right there, that's kind of cool. We ended up actually checking out that morning, and then that same night, there was a drone attack on it, so.
Charles Lowe says getting on a flight back to the U.S. took days.
All the flights were basically canceled, even though they showed them scheduled and ready to go.
He captured this video of an interceptor stopping a missile headed to Abu Dhabi.
What was that like for you? What were you thinking?
It was freaky the first time. Like, I learned how to walk really fast.
David Cisneros says he and his father, originally from Mexico, became stranded in Dubai during a layover. He says it was his father's high blood pressure that allowed them to take a chartered flight to New York.
We got a doctor. Doctor came in. They provided the prescription of whatever we needed. And that's the story that got us out, I need to say.
College students from Connecticut and Massachusetts were stranded in Dubai during a Model United Nations conference.
So we were chairing a conference, judging a conference of mainly high schoolers and college students as well.
We reached out to a lot of just, Senate and then representative offices as well. It seemed like organizationally just wasn't really a plan.
They say students were forced to hide from incoming missiles in a makeshift bomb shelter under their hotel. Evan Ralt says the experience makes him more motivated to pursue his studies in diplomacy.
Now that we were just in an active war zone, that a lot of people have failed in their tasks of trying to solve things with peace, trying to solve things with talks, and they just go straight into war.
According to the UAE, flights are now departing from Dubai International and Dubai World Central airports in a limited capacity following suspended service due to this regional conflict. But again, this is in a limited capacity, not a full capacity. Reporting from JFK Airport, Mia Clark, New York 1.
It is time now for a break. Coming up, we'll speak with one of the only transgender members of Mayor Mamdani's transition team. Abby Stein is going to talk about NYU Langone's decision to halt gender-affirming care for trans youth. Stay with us.
We have so many ways to stay connected. A single touch can bring us closer to the families we love, the friends we know, and the city we share. And Spectrum helps us keep connected throughout the day, every day. Including more ways to watch New York One as a Spectrum Internet customer. Watch Spectrum News New York One on the Spectrum News app, available on all your favorite devices.
I don't know if the world knows this, but kids are expensive. And when we found out we were pregnant, of course, we were looking for any ways to slash bills.
And making sure we only had what we needed so that everything was less stressful.
And saving money with our internet bill really helped us out a lot. Came to Spectrum because we were with AT&T before, and Spectrum just had better deals.
That money we saved with Spectrum just added to what we could repurpose for our daughter.
Real customers, real savings. To see how much you can save, visit spectrum.com/save.
Every day tells a new story. At Mornings on One, we're dedicated to bringing you the stories that matter most to start your day. With in-depth coverage of the day's news.
I'm Pat Kernan. Here are the stories we're following.
And weather updates every 10 minutes.
Tomorrow, some morning sunshine possible. Clouds take over.
It's our responsibility to get you the information you need before you head out the door. Mornings on One. Weekdays starting at 6 on the Spectrum News app. Free for Spectrum and Xfinity customers.
Stand clear of the closing doors, please.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. This week, State Attorney General Letitia James ordered NYU Langone to reinstate its trans youth gender-affirming care program or face legal action. NYU Langone, one of the city's largest hospitals, abruptly ended the program last month after the Trump administration threatened to cut off Medicare and Medicaid funding to hospital systems that provide gender-affirming care to trans youth. Mayor Mamdani condemned the move in a post on social media, but he has not yet taken further action. Here to break down what all of this means is the only transgender member of Mayor Mamdani's Health Committee. Abby Stein is here. She is the author of Becoming Eve, My Journey from Ultra-Orthodox Rabbi to Transgender Woman. Welcome to the program. Good to see you.
Thank you. I do want to do a quick correction. I don't think I was the only one. I think I was the one specifically working on gender-affirming care. That was my role on the transition committee.
Okay.
But I'm not sure I was the only. I'm fairly certain there were a few more.
Okay, fair enough.
Just to be clear.
Well, let's start by making clear what we mean by gender-affirming care. What specific kinds of medical support do transgender patients need?
So I think what's most important here for this conversation is they need what their doctors and therapists say they need. And I think that's what we need to center in this conversation. No one comes into this, wakes up one day and the next day goes to the pharmacy and gets pills or hormones or procedures. This is a process that is done by consulting doctors, by consulting therapists, by making sure that both the mental health and the physical health is covered. So that is what needs to be covered, and what they need access to is whatever their doctors say they need access to. Most of the time, the most common one are puberty blockers, which, very importantly, what it does is reversible. And more importantly, the difference, first in health, and specifically the difference in the rates of suicide, which is unfortunately something we need to talk about when we have these conversations, is really, really big. And not having access to those, which are sometimes as little as simply blocking puberty, not doing anything else, is literally a matter of life and death. And I'm not saying this to be intense. It is a reality.
Okay, so would you have wanted to use those services?
I wish I knew about it. It would have been, my life would have been infinitely easier. I mean, I think by now probably would have been the same, but to be able to do that at age 12, 13, 14, I had, and I describe it more in my book, we said we're going to keep profanities to a minimum on the show, but I described it in my book. When I was 4 years old already, I tried to take matters into my own hands in ways of, I didn't even know what trans means, but I knew what I was feeling. So kids really sometimes know at a young age. And again, by consulting with their doctors, consulting with their therapists, consulting with the people around them. And when those people say that this is what needs to happen, whether it's a puberty blocker or even further care, we need to listen to them, and we need to make sure that they have access to that.
About how many kids would this affect in New York? Is there an estimate?
I think there are some numbers. I don't have the numbers offhand, so I don't want to say something, but I would say it's a few thousand. I personally have met dozens of kids. I was on the board last year of something called Transformative Schools, which is a school specifically for trans youth, just as a social program. And there are, that school alone had dozens of kids. I have met so many. We have done for the past 2 years. The mayor actually came to one last year. We did a rally for trans youth, and we hear from those kids directly.
So now, when the federal government, the Trump administration, has threatened to cut Medicare funding, Medicaid funding, other federal support to hospital systems, and NYU does what? Because they still have a transgender practice. They're just saying, what, young people below a certain age can't
Everyone under 19. So for some reason they decided not even 18, so not even just people who are legally underage, but even 19 for some reason. And what they really do, what is so threatening, is that they threaten Medicaid for everyone.
Sure.
So it's not just, let's say if NYU continues providing care, the federal government is saying, I'm going to take away Medicaid from trans youth or even from trans adults. I'm going to not allow you to process Medicaid whatsoever, which is really dangerous for so many people and impacts the most vulnerable, as we all know. And what's so important also for us, and I think this conversation that we've been having, and since the beginning of the transition when I was on this committee, and until now, specifically with the Deputy Mayor on Health, these conversations that we're having a lot is we want to make sure that we protect the access that we have to trans adults, which NYU and Mount Sinai and all those hospitals are still doing. I mean, I can say it openly, I'm a patient at Mount Sinai, for example, and I've had a really good relationship with the doctors there and with the providers. And we need to find, how do we make sure that that access keeps going? Like Medicaid at the moment does cover for adults, which is the law in New York State. But by New York State law, they also need to cover for trans youth. And how do we make sure that that continues to happen?
Okay. I sense, even just from talking with you, what the outlines of a case by Letitia James might look like, because threatening a program over here in order to get a name over there doesn't always really work out legally. But What should City Hall be doing? I mean, we have 11 public hospitals, and I think Mayor Mamdani has suggested that they might be a place where some of the medical gap could be filled, right?
So at the moment, and I think this has really been the struggle, and I think a lot of people in our community, myself included, have been very frustrated. We want to see more happening, but I'm also inside City Hall to say that, I know the struggle that we're having of trying to balance those, because in some ways we could come down. We can say by New York City, by New York State law, these hospitals, at least the public hospitals, but also NYU, they, like the letter of the Attorney General said, you have to cover it. But at the same time, we need to make sure still that we can do both. Yes, there's the health and New York Health and Hospitals is definitely a path. It's something, that conversation that we keep having on how do we to be able to fill that gap. And I will say I've heard that from the mayor directly on one-on-one conversations and in the statements that he has made publicly, that this is a priority, to make sure that we fill in the gap. Exactly how it looks depends on this game that we have to unfortunately play with the federal government to make sure that we both protect trans adults, we protect trans youth, and that we protect all the other programs for elderly New Yorkers, and we all know, as soon as they can, they will try to target HIV and PrEP. They're going to try to target everything they can until they get what they want. So we need to be smarter than that. And we need to make sure that we fill in that gap, which is a strong priority. We don't throw anyone under the bus, and that we keep what we already have.
Yeah, and I mean, and just to be clear, before we say goodnight, the reality is any medical treatment that young people want, their parents have to give consent, right? You can't just walk into a clinic and even get a flu shot if you're 13 years old. So this is not just about the youth. This is about the youth and their families and their parents who are looking for this care.
To say a language that I think the right loves to hear is parental rights, because these are all kids that are coming with their parents. I mean, besides 18 and 19-year-olds, which are also being targeted. But for kids, yes, these are parents who have consulted with doctors and with therapists and with teachers. I know personally so many kids, no one makes this decision easily. And by the time we get to the fact that they have a prescription or that they go to a doctor, taking that away from them is attacking the kids, it's attacking their parents, it's attacking the professionals, the mental health and physical health professionals who have done the work.
Okay. Thank you for bringing us up to date. You hear so much about this, and we normally just report on the rallies and the protests and the lawsuits, but this is a great inside look at what is going on. And best of luck to you. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you so much.
Okay, that was Abby Stein, and that is going to do it for tonight's show. Thanks so much for watching, and have a great evening. We'll see you next time inside City Hall. Going into the 2026 election, local races will determine national policy, from the economy to public safety. From the governor's race to the balance of power in Washington, this year's ballot has no shortage of important choices. Let Spectrum News New York One be your resource for balanced, up-to-date coverage and analysis, so you can know what the issues are and how they impact your community. Always dedicated, always local, always on. Decision 2026 on Spectrum News New York One.
This is a very special place. It is a place where we like to think we make memories.
We have the capacity for nearly 20,000 people in the arena.
Working at a building like this, you have access to so many resources. It's about utilizing the tools that we have to be able to create those memories for our partners, for our fans, and for anybody who steps into this building. At the end of the game, they're going to leave here feeling like they enjoyed the experience, enjoyed the game, and that's what we're here for.
A venue like this has a lot of moving parts, but at its heart, it has its technology backbone.
Spectrum powers scoreboards, ticketing, point of sales. They also provide a highly secure network that takes care of fan security, security of the Wi-Fi access, and any data that our fans are sharing while in the arena.
Our fans have an expectation that technology is part of their experience, and Spectrum helps us do that.
There's nothing quite like the feeling of going to the theater. Onstage celebrates that excitement every week by taking you behind the scenes with the latest news and in-depth interviews of the hottest shows on and off Broadway. So grab a seat, because this is a show you won't want to miss.